Deserts are extremely fascinating areas with extreme weather fluctuations and sparse precipitation. You may have heard of or even visited some of the largest deserts, like the Sahara Desert, the Gobi Desert, the Syrian Desert, and the Great Basin Desert. They are characterized by rather hostile living conditions that challenge most ecosystems and societies that try to make a life there. However, this does not mean that deserts are not full of juicy scientific and archaeological discoveries that scientists want to explain but can't. In today's video, we are going to discuss some of the weirdest, most mysterious desert finds that archaeologists are still trying to make a sense of. Sit tight, because number 5 is going to leave you so stunned you might never recover from the shock. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more like this one. So, what are these unexpected desert discoveries? Let's get started. Ancient royal boat found in a commoner's grave. Much unlike many of the democratic societies we have today, many ancient societies were characterized by different social groups defined by financial or political status, the rich or royalty, the religious figures, and the commoners. The royalty, wealthy, and religious figures rarely interacted with or married the commoners. This is why it was shocking when, in January 2016, a 60-foot wooden boat fit for a king was found in the Egyptian necropolis of Luxor, preserved by the sands for over 4,500 years. But rather than this expensive boat being found in a royal's tomb, it was found in the unremarkable tomb of a commoner. The practice of burying ancient royals with their boats started in the early dynastic period. The boats were expected to carry their owners to the afterlife. The man in this tomb was buried with an expensive boat made out of imported materials, but he was not of any status or royalty, and archaeologists have yet to figure out why someone who was considered a peasant would be given such a sacred burial. The Taklamakan mummies. In the early 1900s, a Swedish explorer named Sven Hedin discovered the 4,000-year-old ancient city of Luleå, lost under the sands of the Taklamakan Desert, which is also known as the Great Desert of Asia. Almost a century later, explorers and scientists would find a very well-preserved mummy that would be named the Beauty of Luleå. They also found other mummies in the location alongside the Beauty. These discoveries were interesting because the mummies seemed to be of a Caucasian origin, complete with distinctively red and blonde hair. The Chinese government has been reluctant to confirm this suspicion or even indicate that they know anything about it. One of the mummies, known as the Ying Pan Man, was 6 foot 6 inches tall. The discovery proves that ancient people that were not of Chinese origin likely traded with and settled alongside Asian cultures over 4,000 years ago. The horned kangaroo. What do you know about kangaroos today? Well, a general characteristic of kangaroos, regardless of where they come from, is that they do not have horns. Does this mean kangaroos have never had horns? A collection of megafauna fossils discovered in Australia's Nullarbor seem to suggest otherwise. During the excavation that led to this discovery, the explorers uncovered the first complete skeleton of the giant marsupial lion, known as the Thylacoleo. They also discovered the mysterious skull of a horned kangaroo that dates back sometime between 200,000 and 500,000 years ago. Unlike the kangaroos you know, or other fossilized kangaroos that have been discovered, the horned kangaroo has a strange bulbous snout and bony projections that stick out above their eyes. The horn-like features might have been there to protect the animals when they fed on spiky and thorny plants. The partial skeletons that the explorers found also had digging claws, which are typically found on smaller burrowing animals. So maybe this kangaroo was an anomalous breed between a kangaroo and another animal that somehow survived till birth. If there are others like it, it could mean that this is a special breed of kangaroos that had to develop special features to adapt to their environment. Family circles of the Namib Desert. On the grasslands of the Namib Desert, there are eerie, strange circular patches of land called the fairy circle. Each circle measures between 6 and 40 feet across and can remain in place for up to 75 years. The circles have been a head-scratcher for scientists for decades, leading them to develop several theories about their cause, such as sand termites, evaporation of water from plants, and patterns of rainfall that cause competition between plants and grasses sucking nutrients from the soil. But nobody has been able to give a definitive explanation, prompting many local legends. Some say the fairy circles were caused by divine intervention. Others say they are caused by underground dragons or spirits. And yet, some have come up with several UFO conspiracy theories explaining the circles. Which one is correct? We may never know. The Atacama Mummy. We have all heard stories of mysterious creatures with strange features, but nothing tops the Atacama Mummy. Discovered in the Atacama Desert in 2003, the Atacama Mummy is a 6-inch alien-looking humanoid. This human creature, which became known as Atta, inspired the release of a documentary a decade later called Sirius. Sirius is said to finally reveal the truth about ancient aliens, with DNA testing done on a sample of Atta's bone marrow. And here is where it gets interesting. The tests actually revealed that Atta was 91% human and is thought to have lived until he was between 6 and 8 years old. The remaining 9% of Atta's composition are of unknown properties that experts are yet to figure out. Interestingly, 70 years before Atta was found, a similar discovery of a humanoid with 6.5 inches of height was made in a different region of the Atacama Desert. It was named Attaboy by Robert Ripley of Ripley's Believe It or Not. Strange purple spheres. In 2013, a couple was taking a walk and taking photos in the Arizona desert southeast of Tucson when they discovered thousands of strange watery, translucent, and purple spheres sparkling in the sun. It was a pretty sight, but they did not know what exactly they were looking at or what caused it to be there. To date, experts have yet to determine what these strange purple orbs might be. Most of them seem to think they could be some kind of fungus or a slime or a mold, or maybe hydrobubbles, which can be purchased at most supermarkets. So, did a tourist leave store-purchased hydrobubbles on a desert, or is there something else going on there? Giant alien hand. A group of self-proclaimed paranormal researchers called the Institute Incari Cusco has claimed to have found a large alien claw while excavating the Cusco caves in 2016. They also allegedly found an elongated skull with some skin tissue still intact. French explorer Thierry Gemin claimed his colleagues and fellow researcher Edson Salazar Vivanco performed an X-ray on the giant hand and found that it only had 3 fingers, all connected by some kind of metallic implants. However, the claw has not been subject to any further independent test, but if it is real, then it would have belonged to an individual standing between 2.7 and 3 meters tall, a giant technically. Geoglyphs of Jordan. In 1927, a group of World War I pilots found circular geoglyphs in the Wadi Wasad in the Black Desert of Jordan. Lieutenant Percy Maitland, one of the pilots, published an account of this discovery in the journal Antiquity. If you were wondering, a geoglyph is a large-scale drawing or image made on the ground by arranging lines of stones, scratching the earth, or making any other mark on the earth. They are usually only fully visible from the sky or a distance. Recently, a study revealed that these geoglyphs occur throughout Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen. They have different shapes, including the shapes of kites, meandering walls, and pendants in various sizes ranging from 50 meters to over 1,000 meters wide. They are also 8,500 years old, meaning they predate Peru's Nazca lines by 6,000 years. They are so interesting because experts have been unable to figure out why people from these regions designed these geoglyphs. Were they there for worship or for decoration? Some sort of ritual? The Marfa Lights. At the Trans-Pecos high desert town of Marfa, the Marfa lights shine brightly, as they have for generations. They hover, split, merge, and dart across the desert lands, impossible to predict. Reports from the location include several eyewitnesses describing the mysterious orbs of light as roughly the size of basketballs with varying colors like white, blue, red, and yellow. Some Native Americans believe they are fallen stars. Paranormal investigators believe they could be the wandering ghosts of Spanish conquistadors, while alien theorists believe that they could be otherworldly bodies. Scientific experts believe they could be caused by methane, producing a similar effect to swamp gas. Alternatively, they propose that the lights are some kind of electrical charges produced by solid matter like crystals, minerals, and ceramics. But these are all speculations. To date, there is no consensus on what causes the Marfa lights to appear as they do. A graveyard of sea creatures. Once again, the Atacama Desert is appearing on our list. In 2010, a highway widening project was ongoing at the Atacama Desert when workers stumbled upon a mind-blowing discovery. They had just uncovered the skeletons of 75 whales. These were no ordinary whales, but prehistoric whales that are believed to have been around about 5 million years ago. They were found lying next to one another and were some of the most well-preserved whales remains ever found. According to the Royal Society, the fossilized graveyard likely resulted from whales ingesting fatal amounts of toxic algae along with their prey. As they were dying, they must have been washed into an estuary and onto more flat terrain, where they would become buried over time. 5 mysterious lake appearances. While living in the desert or any arid or semi-arid region, you mostly have to accept that water might be one of your most prized possessions because of the hot temperature and dry sands. So, what do you do when a lake mysteriously appears in your backyard? That is exactly what happened in 2014 in a desert area about 25 kilometers from Gafsa, Tunisia. A mystery lake spanning about 2.6 acres seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. The local shepherd who discovered it could not believe his eyes as he stared down at what would later measure as an 18-meter deep pool of water. Nobody could explain this mystery. However, officials with the Regional Directorate of Civil Protection believe the spring was likely caused by a fractured layer of rock caused by seismic activity due to phosphate mining in the area. If this is true, then the water is likely full of carcinogens and radioactive materials that are harmful to human health. Despite several warnings, the locals continue to use the lake. When you consider that the area has suffered severe drought conditions under the scorching desert heat for years, you can understand why the locals will see this mystery lake as a blessing. The Dead Sea Scrolls Treasure Map. You might have heard about the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were one of the most remarkable archaeological finds of the 20th century, uncovered between 1946 and 1956. However, it is one of the 981 scrolls, called the Copper Scroll, that has baffled experts for many years because it appears to be a treasure map intricately detailing 64 locations containing several tons of gold and silver. However, the Copper Scroll is inscribed in a form of Hebrew that is different from the ancient Hebrew found in the other texts. The dialect is more commonly used hundreds of years after ancient Hebrew. Explorers have carried out several expeditions to locate the treasures, but unfortunately, nothing has been found yet. Maybe the treasure has already been found centuries ago, or it is still out there. Explorers keep searching, hopefully till they find something. Chinese desert patterns. In 2011, Google Earth users found strange designs carved into the Gobi Desert in China's provinces of Xinjiang and Gansu. The patterns are supposedly used by satellite operators working for the Chinese government to work out the distances and angles from space. However, alien conspiracy theorists think otherwise. They believe the patterns, which could be measured up to a mile, are similar to crop circles or landing zones for UFOs. There are similar patterns in the Arizona desert used for the same purpose as the ones found in China, but conspiracy theorists still believe there is a much more interesting explanation for them. Shell cover-up. In 2003, the owners of the Texas-New Mexico pipeline company Shell landed in hot waters over an oil spill from one of their pipelines in the 1990s that they tried to cover up. They had sold said pipelines to Houston-based EOTT Energy, which was, in turn, being sued by the residents for the environmental damage caused by the oil spill. EOTT then countersued Shell, claiming that they were not responsible for the pipelines when the damage occurred. To avoid a lawsuit, Shell took 190 boxes full of environmental data, financial ledgers, and maps and buried them 40 feet deep into the desert near the company's pipeline, 25 miles southeast of Las Vegas. Investigators only found the documents because a former employee told lawyers of their existence and exact location. The Lost Libraries of the Chinguetti. At the end of a desert road in Mauritania, West Africa, a near-abandoned town called Chinguetti is slowly becoming swallowed by the sands of the Sahara. In its prime, Chinguetti was a medieval metropolis that was home to 20,000 residents, including scholars of law, religion, science, medicine, mathematics, and astronomy. It was also a holy city and a gathering place for pilgrims journeying to Mecca. It was known as the 7th Holy City of Islam and the City of Libraries. Most of the libraries are gone today, but there is still a handful left containing around 6,000 priceless books that are still intact since the 9th century. Unfortunately, experts believe that in just 30 years, the city will be lost to climate change. Egypt is home to many secrets and many legends. The mysteries of the Great Sphinx have long baffled and delighted Egyptologists and high school history buffs alike. This iconic Egyptian limestone structure depicts a mythical reclining sphinx and is Egypt's oldest known monumental sculpture. There are other sphinxes out there, many of which have yet to be discovered, but most of them are small in scale compared to the Great Sphinx of Giza, built around the same time as the Great Pyramid about 4,500 years ago. There are some secret tunnels and chambers rumored to still be discovered under the Sphinx. Secret tunnels and secret chambers found under the Sphinx of Egypt. There are supposedly some secret tunnels and chambers housed beneath the Great Sphinx of Giza, and only a few have been discovered. Independent Egyptologist John Anthony West led a series of expeditions between 1991 and 1993. It was asserted that the Sphinx was carved near the end of the last ice age when heavy rains beat down on the Sahara, which dramatically differs from the generalized assumption that the statue was carved about 4,500 years ago. West and his crew thought that a lost civilization built the Sphinx, but they were quite literally evicted from the site by the Egyptian government's chief inspector of antiquities for the pyramids and Sphinx, Dr. Zahi Hawass. Hawass was angered by the NBC television film about the team's expedition. The production asserted that a hall of records housed beneath the Sphinx paws could link the site to the lost city of Atlantis. Hawass called these claims American hallucinations and deemed the expeditions unscientific. The film had been sponsored by the Virginia Beach-based Association for Research and Enlightenment, ARE, an association whose mission is to explore the revelations of American psychic Edgar Cayce. Prior to his death in 1947, Cayce claimed that the Sphinx had been built in 10,500 BC and had a secret hall of records buried beneath it where the Atlanteans stored the history of their long-since lost society. Perhaps a little to Dr. Hawass's detriment, secret tunnels were in fact found below the Sphinx and around the pyramids, which Hawass announced to the public in April of 1996. A pair of Sphinx found in Luxor. The Great Sphinx of Giza is not the only Sphinx to be found in Egypt. In fact, a pair of smaller Sphinxes were found in Luxor. The Luxor Temple was a ceremonial site specifically used during the annual Opet Festival, in which the statues of Amun, Mut, Khonsu, found on the Avenue of Sphinxes, were toted all the way from the Karnak and reunited in the temple's sacred space. In the temple, the Avenue of Sphinx houses 700 Sphinxes carved from sandstone. But recently, 2 more statues were discovered in a nearby temple in Luxor by the Colossi of Memnon and Amenhotep III Temple Conservation Project. These large sphinxes each measure 26 feet long and were discovered partially submerged in water at a temple erected for Amenhotep III, King Tutankhamun's grandfather, a pharaoh who ruled Egypt between 390 BC and 1353 BC. A combined team of German and Egyptian researchers were investigating the Temple of Millions of Years when they found the artifacts located close to a processional road used during Amenhotep III's lifetime for celebrations and ceremonies. The pair of limestone sphinxes depict Amenhotep wearing a large necklace and mongoose headdress. An inscription on his chest reads, "The beloved of the god Amun-Ra," which was Amenhotep's royal name. Discovery of the Theban necropolis Sphinx-like face. Another rather unique Sphinx-related discovery was made in 2022, that of a massive face that had been carved into the side of a mountain near the Theban necropolis. The significance of this discovery is the resemblance it bears to the Great Sphinx in Giza. The Theban necropolis itself is home to quite a few hidden secrets, including some 40 mummies, with Ramses II, Seti I, and Thutmose III numbered among them. Guarding these mummies is the recently discovered mountainside carving. It appears to show the face of someone wearing a wig, looking similar to the goddess Hathor, daughter of the sun god Ra. While there is no body of an animal present, professor and Egyptologist Jose Ramon Perez Aquino says it could very well serve as a protective figure, much like the Great Sphinx. Unfortunately, it seems as though the face in the mountain was purposely vandalized sometime in the Middle Ages as the area was being massively Christianized and temples turned into monasteries. What is so special about this statue is that it quite literally lights up during the spring solstice, indicating that it served a spiritual purpose. What that purpose is, though, one can only guess. A history of the Great Sphinx of Giza. The Great Sphinx of Giza sets the tone for all other sphinxes in Egypt, but it also holds so many secrets buried within its unique limestone structure. With a human head, possibly in the likeness of Pharaoh Khafre, placed atop a laying lion's body, the Great Sphinx was probably built around 2558 to 2532 BC, although, of course, that is still up for debate. Still, it is one of the world's oldest and biggest monolithic statues. Back when it was built, Egyptians didn't have any bronze or iron tools. They probably used stone hammers and copper chisels, which would have been used for detailing. The Great Sphinx was likely supposed to be part of an even bigger temple complex, but Khafre's vision for the temple never came to fruition. An excavation in 1978 found 3 stone blocks in the quarry excavation, which suggests that laborers abandoned them as they were dragging them to the Sphinx temple complex. The northern edge of the ditch near the Sphinx had sections of bedrock that were only partly quarried. Along with a toolkit and workman's lunch, it seems as though the workers simply walked off the job. Why did the workers ditch their jobs? No one knows for sure. What Egyptologists do know is that no name of a priest or priestess was attached to the temple, and that the temple was never used. All that is left of the temple is its eroded limestone foundations. Considering that historians do not even know for sure that it was Khafre who commissioned this massive undertaking in his likeness, we may never find any historical texts or hieroglyphs that tell us why the temple was left unfinished. It was once buried in sand. The Great Sphinx was once buried in sand up to its neck, which lasted for about 700 years until Thutmose started renovations on the structure. In fact, it is believed that he was the first to have any repair work done on the Great Sphinx. The structure became a tourist attraction, with ancient Greeks and Romans flocking to it, taking in its wonder. Some Roman emperors, out of pure curiosity, visited the Sphinx. What's more, it was the Romans who began clearing away all the sand that had piled up over the years. After the Romans began clearing away the sand in the 1st century AD, they built a monumental stairway leading up to the Sphinx's giant paws. The Romans also erected a podium for viewing the Sphinx at the top of those stairs. That podium stood until 1931, when excavations at the site dismantled it. The nose broke off between the 3rd and 10th centuries AD, and no one knows why. What you see of the Sphinx today is a partial restoration using limestone layered blocks. Quite clearly, the head and face show a lot of wear and tear from centuries of both exposure to the elements and vandalism. The nose, it is said, broke off sometime between the 3rd and 10th centuries AD. A 15th century Egyptian Arab historian named al-Marzarki asserted that the nose's destruction came at the hands of a Sufi Muslim fanatic called Muhammad Sayyam al-Dar. In 1378, he attacked the Sphinx with a crowbar type of tool after becoming enraged that the Egyptian peasantry was still praying to the Great Sphinx, which he believed was a representation of the god Abu Hol. The peasants hoped that Abu Hol would give them abundant crops, as they were being threatened by the increasingly sprawling desert sands. They burned offerings in front of the monument in order to appease the god. In his fit of rage, Sayyam al-Dahar, on a solo quest apparently, pried the nose loose and also damaged some of the blocks in the air areas. Of course, this didn't sit well with the peasants who worshipped the monument as a god and gained a bit of tourist income. They were so mad that they actually lynched Sayyam al-Dahar and buried him in front of the Sphinx as an offering to Abu Hol. Unfortunately for them, that did not help them with their crops, and the desert sands overtook Giza. At least, that is the most official version of events on file. Whether one holy man managed to destroy so much of the Sphinx's face on his own is still up for debate. The Osiris Shaft. In his expeditions to Giza, Dr. Zahi Hawass and his team of researchers explored what he calls the Osiris Shaft, located about halfway between Khafre's funerary temple and the Great Sphinx. It can be accessed through a shaft known as Shaft A, and it consists of 3 vertical shafts that lead to 3 different levels. Level 2 and 3 were found to house even more chambers. Dr. Hawass asserted that this underground complex was one and the same as that described by the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who, in the 5th century BC, visited the Great Sphinx of Giza and saw the Osiris Shaft. Herodotus thought that the tomb belonged to Khufu, 2nd pharaoh of the 4th dynasty and father of Khafre. Herodotus probably never entered the shaft, so his description of it is lacking in detail. He probably gained his information from local tour guides. Potsherds from the 6th dynasty, found in Shaft C, were the first artifacts uncovered from the Osiris Shaft. This led Dr. Hawass to conclude the shaft was probably built around that time. Chambers in level 2 of Shaft C were probably added later on, in the late period, which was when Giza started receiving more attention again. All in all, Dr. Hawass felt that this was a dummy tomb for Osiris, the Egyptian god of the dead. He came to this conclusion because the mythology surrounding Osiris came to a climax in the Old Kingdom, and the construction of the shaft complex in the 6th dynasty, therefore, makes sense with the rise of the Osirian cult. These Egyptians were essentially digging downward into the underworld, the realm of Osiris. Texts from the New Kingdom support this theory, as does the fact that the sarcophagus found in Chamber 1 is surrounded by 4 pillars and water. Osiris's underworld realm is immersed in water. Interestingly enough, the Giza Plateau was known as the House of Osiris, Lord of Rostau, in the New Kingdom. Osiris would have been symbolically buried inside of the shaft so as to provide kings buried in nearby temples power. Also, a cemetery for Osiris is located nearby, dating from the Ptolemaic and Roman periods. The New Kingdom found merit in the Osiris shaft as Osiris's cult gained traction, but there are still secrets buried within its various chambers and shafts, and each one of these areas around the Sphinx is utterly unique. Perring's Hole. One of the Great Sphinx's known hidden chambers is called Perring's Hole. This hole is the Sphinx's back, approximately 4 feet in back of the head. It was constructed in 1840 by Howard Weiss and was dubbed Perring's Hole in honor of the man who engineered it. Weiss had this hole made because he believed that he could access secret chambers inside of the Great Sphinx by devising this hole. It was supposed to measure in at 27 feet in depth, but the drill rod got jammed. Weiss attempted to use gunpowder to get the drill rod out, but he gave up on that since he did not want to cause any further damage to this monolithic structure. In 1978, Dr. Zahi Hawass cleared the hole created by Weiss. When he ventured inside, he discovered part of the Great Sphinx's headdress, an unexpected and riveting find indeed. The Eastern Shaft. Located within the Great Sphinx's paws is a trapdoor forged from iron. Just look into the middle of the Sphinx chest and the Thutmose IV dream stele. This actually is not a passageway, rather it is a rectangular pit below the door was covered with a roof made from cement, which was then sealed off with this trapdoor. This was done by French Egyptologist Émile Barrès. He was tasked with restoring the structure back in the 1920s and did this in order to help preserve the Great Sphinx. Shaft A. Another pathway paved by Barrès is Shaft A. Shaft A is a deep hole paved in cement right atop the Great Sphinx's head. This hole measures in at about 5 feet square and has a depth of nearly 6 feet. Again, a trapdoor forged from iron was fixed to the opening of the hole. There is some speculation that the hole was started as a way to attach an Egyptian headdress onto the Great Sphinx, similar to what was achieved in the New Kingdom, but later it was supposedly deepened in order to search for hidden chambers inside the monolith. Shaft C. Another shaft, known as Shaft C, can be found along the backside of the Great Sphinx. If you go down this square shaft, you will find yourself at a dead end. It measures in at 1.58 meters and is 2.4 meters wide. There is a depth of 3.2 meters and it is located at 0.4 meters to the northwest of the exit from the second shaft. In his excavation of the shaft, Dr. Hawass discovered that the chamber floor was excavated from the south side. Inside this chamber, Dr. Hawass and his team found an anthropoid sarcophagus of granite. It had been set into the pit that had been carved into the chamber floor. The sarcophagus the team found measures in at 210 centimeters long, 50 centimeters wide, and 45 centimeters deep. Inside of it were the badly decomposed remains of a human skeleton, accompanied by a slew of pottery shards and shabits that dated from the 26th dynasty, from 664 to 525 BC, and also known as the Sa'id period. The sarcophagus's shape itself also places its date within the 26th dynasty. Shaft D. Dr. Hawass and fellow Egyptologist Mark Lerner opened a passage in their 1980 expedition, which they referred to as Shaft D. This shaft is located in the northwest hind part of the Great Sphinx on the floor. This shaft has been discovered previously by a boy named Mohammed Abdul Mawag Fayed. He had been helping Émile Barrès in 1926 with clearing this area out. This shaft drops down to the water table that exists below the Sphinx. Part of this unique passageway winds down around the Sphinx and ends in a dead-end stop approximately 4.5 meters below the level of the floor. In the 1980 to 81 expedition, it was discovered that Shaft D's lower portion in fact extended all the way to the water table. Above this area, the explorers found a bunch of more modern items such as glass, tinfoil, and cement. The sides of this passageway are not straight and have a crude cut to them. Oddly though, there are footholds on the sides of the wall that allow people to walk over. It seems to be more of an exploratory shaft than anything else. The Keyhole Shaft. Another oddly designed chamber is the Keyhole Shaft. It is part of Shaft D in the Sphinx's enclosure, but not actually connected to the Sphinx itself. Known as the Keyhole Shaft, it is located on the floor of the Shaft D enclosure, beneath the wall's northernmost ledge. This puts it right behind the Sphinx's northern hind paw. The Keyhole Shaft is approximately 4.5 feet by 3.5 feet and is slightly over 6 feet deep. Inside of the shaft, explorers discovered a massive piece of basalt that had just one smooth, finished side to it. There are theories that this shaft was meant to serve as a tomb that had never quite been finished. a rumored Hall of Records. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding the Great Sphinx of Giza is the Hall of Records. Psychic Edgar Cayce once prophesied that a Hall of Records belonging to the lost city of Atlantis' people could be found within the Sphinx. Given Cayce's rampant popularity and notoriety for his accuracy, some people started to wonder if he was right. As already mentioned, there was an NBC-linked expedition that got kicked out of the tunnels and chambers by Dr. Hawass in 1993. John West and his team were having a documentary TV film made about their expedition, and there was an assertion being made that the Sphinx was much older than already reported. That seemingly set Dr. Hawass off, which prompted him to expel the team. One thing that West and his team theorized on was the existence of the Hall of Records left by the Atlanteans. This film posited that the Hall of Records was located somewhere in one of the Sphinx's paws, but Hawass dismissed these claims as American hallucinations. However, just a few years later, in 1996, Dr. Hawass had to admit that there were unknown chambers located beneath the Great Sphinx and that they probably held within them many secrets yet to be revealed. Author Graham Hancock gave a book tour in 1996 in which he detailed his discovery that the heavens aligned perfectly with the Giza Plateau in 10,500 BC, which would have made the rumored Hall of Records a truly sacred space for an ancient civilization predating the Egyptians. Hancock often counteracts Orthodox Egyptologists, claiming that the Great Sphinx is actually a representation of Khafre due to hieroglyphic inscription in a single letter of Khafre's name on the stone tablet that sits in the front of the Sphinx. Egyptologists added in the second syllable into the translation without truly knowing its meaning. To quote Hancock, Egyptologists find facts to fit their theories when they should be making theories based on the facts. Perhaps that is why we know so little about the Great Sphinx and its significance as part of the Giza Plateau and, more broadly, of ancient Egyptian culture. The Old Kingdom Cemetery that houses the bones of laborers and overseers. Another interesting discovery related to the Great Sphinx of Giza is that there is an Old Kingdom cemetery nearby that houses the bones of overseers and laborers who worked on the monolithic structure. It wasn't until 1990 that this cemetery was discovered, and it happened very haphazardly. A female American tourist was riding her horse when she was suddenly bucked off about half a mile due south of the Sphinx. A low-sitting mud brick wall was exposed, and is what had started the horse after it stumbled into the wall. Dr. Hawass was sent to investigate this Old Kingdom cemetery and found 600 people buried there. Overseers were entombed and identified by their names and titles inscribed on their tombs. Around them were the less ornate tombs of the laborers. About 9 years after this discovery, Dr. Hawass and Mark Lerner found a lost city close to the cemetery. After excavation started, they realized this settlement dated to Khafre's reign and was larger than 10 football fields. 4 clusters of 8 lengthy mud brick barracks stood at the center of this lost city, resembling something like a modern house. There were sleeping platforms, a kitchen, and a pillared porch. About 50 people could sleep side by side there. If there were 2 or more levels, over 2,000 workers could have possibly been housed there. Young male cattle, in other words, some real prime beef, remains were found at the site, indicating that the laborers were probably men who were above slave status. The laborers likely had some status, even if it was not very high up on the social ladder. Viewing the sun during spring and fall equinoxes. One of the other things that Lerner discovered during his excavations of the Great Sphinx of Giza was that a dynamic astronomical event occurs at the Great Sphinx if you stand there on either the spring or fall equinox. If you stand inside of the eastern portion during sunset, you will see the sun apparently sinking right into the shoulders of the Sphinx, and just beyond that, it also seemingly sinks into the back part of Khafre's pyramid. The shadows of the Sphinx and the pyramid simultaneously converge as symbols of the king. This is why Lerner theorizes that the Sphinx represents the pharaoh bringing offerings to the sun god Ra to the temple's court. This could represent Khafre as Horus, the falcon god, giving offerings to his father Ra, which symbolizes Khafre's father Khufu as an incarnation of Ra. Also, when you stand at the Sphinx during the summer solstice, the sun appears to set right in between the silhouettes casted by the pyramids of Khufu and Khafre. The scene itself resembles the hieroglyph Akhet, which translates to horizon. This could also symbolize the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. It seems that solar events were literally built into the Great Sphinx of Giza and the nearby Great Pyramids. Might this complex have been designed to harness the power of the sun god Ra and other gods who could resurrect the spirit of the pharaoh? Unfortunately, the Great Sphinx was apparently never finished, and Khafre's vision for a cosmic supercenter was never fully realized. The Sahara Desert is the largest in the world and experiences one of the harshest climates globally. The desert spans 11 countries and has been an area of interest for climate watches and archaeologists. 4.6 billion year old meteorite. Whenever a meteorite falls to Earth, there will be evidence in the area where it made contact with the ground. One of these meteors was discovered in 2020 in the Sahara Desert. According to a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the meteor had many andesites, a black volcanic oil found in the area where tectonic plates collide. The properties of the rock have led scientists to believe that the rock was a piece of a protoplanet. Based on the dating from research, scientists believe that the rock broke off in the early stages of the solar system's development. Protoplanets are considered to be ancestors of the planets as we know them. There are various theories about this and how the solar system came to be. Most of the theories suggest that the protoplanets were way smaller than the Moon in the solar system. They also suggest that they would have been the current solar system if they were to be formed. The stone is one of the scientists' incredible new discovery under Sahara that changed everything. The discovery has made us look at the solar system in a different light. Supernova IA explosion evidence. In 1992, scientists discovered a stone in the Sahara Desert, which was presumed to be the trace of the supernova IA explosion. The supernova explosion was a type of star explosion that caused some energetic waves in the universe. It is believed that the meteor's impact on the Earth led to the breaking of rocks and the development of the Great Sand Sea in southwestern Egypt. The supernova experience is also believed to have been the start of mankind after the dinosaurs were wiped from the Earth. The Lost River. Even though the Sahara Desert is dry at the moment, there was a time when the desert had water and rivers running through it. Climate change has covered up evidence of the rivers and lakes initially in the desert. But just like there was evidence of water being on Mars in the past, there has been evidence of rivers running through the Sahara Desert. One of these rivers seems to have dried out in Mauritania. An undersea canyon was also discovered that seems to have been the riverbed. Another confirmation of this river was a satellite image that shows the trail of said river. All this evidence points to rivers and other water resources in the Sahara Desert before everything changed. It is no wonder the whole concept of this desert keeps baffling scientists, geologists, and the general population. Whales in the Sahara. Don't let present looks fool you. There was a time when the Sahara Desert was so hot and humid that it had sea life. At the top of the list of these creatures was the whale. You heard that right. In Wadi al-Hitan, Egypt, there has been evidence of a Tethys ocean. The ocean was also known as Whale Valley because of the numerous whales that inhabited the area. As the water dried away, the whales remained behind and died. Even though the sands of the desert covered the fossils, archaeologists were able to dig these bones up. The evidence goes to show just how much water was in the Sahara Desert at the moment. The shocking thing about these fossils is the fact that their bones had feet. It gives into the idea that some scientists had of whales. Theories explain that whales were land mammals but decided to go live in the sea. As a result, their bodies evolved and they lost the use of their feet, since the feet were no longer necessary. While one might try to argue this out, the presence of whale fossils with limbs resembling feet does make quite the argument. If you have been with us until this point, take a minute to hit the like buttons and subscribe to our channel if you haven't. We produce content like this on many different topics. Now let's get back to our list of awesome discoveries. Number 13 will shock you. Nabda stones. Despite the harsh living conditions in the desert, there will always be a group of people who make it a home. In the case of the Sahara Desert, these people come from the Neolithic tribes of the desert. These groups will make a home near a water source and build their lives there until the water dries up and they decide to move and start their new life elsewhere. When people lived in Nabda Playa about 6,000 years ago, the area was new to flooding. The rainwater created a lake in the area, which services the community. These tribes not only found sustenance there, but built their community. With the community came different practices. Based on archaeological findings, it is believed that these people would sacrifice their animals to a deity. There have been dug up bones of cows and sheep that were ritually buried. About 600 years ago, the community that stayed in the region set up large stones in a circle that had more rocks radiating outward. The rocks are evidence of one of the first astronomical aligned structures ever built. While there is no evidence of what these rocks were set up for, it is believed that the people were aligning them to Orion's belt. The rocks show that astrology matters have been here for a while and have had some significance to the region's people at that time. Eye of the Sahara. The Eye of the Sahara is also known as Glub-e-Rekat and is a structure that can be seen from outer space. The feature is found on the Ardar Plateaus near Wendane. The Rekat structure is believed to have links to the lost city of Atlantis. Even though the structure has been known to the locals for a while, it became known to the rest of the world in the 1960s when astronauts photographed it. They used the Eye of the Sahara's landmark when tracking their landing sequence. The structure is so big that it can be seen from outer space. The structure was then photographed after the landing of the astronauts by a satellite that helped give more data on the structure itself. The satellite was able to calculate the length and width of the eye as well as the depth it went to. It helped give a better perspective on the Eye of the Sahara and its composition. The initial assumption people made was that the Eye of the Desert was caused by a meteor. Upon further study, scientists' incredible discovery under Sahara changes everything. It was discovered that there was no outer space interference and earthly influences caused the Eye of the Sahara. This discovery made the archaeologists want to dig further. The formation continues with rocks dating back to 100 million years before life on Earth existed. Some theories by philosophers like Plato claim that the Eye of the Sahara is connected to the lost city of Atlantis. Since it was found in Mauritania, it has been hiding in plain sight all these years. Since Atlantis is still being looked for, the Eye of the Sahara is still one of the mysteries that mankind is yet to understand. It is believed that the sinking of Atlantis led to a shift in climate change, which is experienced to date. Clayton rings. The Sahara Desert remains a mystery, and with this next discovery, people were shocked at what the discovery was all about. The one thing most people have noticed when it comes to the Sahara is that there is so much that one needs to learn about the desert. One of these things is the Clayton rings. These rings were found in Egypt, in one of the inhospitable parts of the Sahara Desert. These rings are conical and open at both ends. They were named after the person who discovered them, Patrick Andrew Clayton. They were discovered with other potters that have an opening, but the rings have never fitted as lids. There is no sign of them being used by Egyptians living by the Nile. Rather, most people believe they came from nomadic Egyptians who were herders. These rings are believed to be a part of the people that shaped Egyptian culture. They were discovered in areas where herders and hunters used to stay and areas away from these grounds. The disparity between these two locations made people question the significance of the rings. No one person has been able to pinpoint the use of the rings, yet the people who used them went to great lengths to transport them across deserts. Whatever their use was will stay a mystery to date, since there is not one explorer that has been able to decipher them. Dinosaur fossil. Over the years, many fossils have been discovered in the desert. These fossils gave us a look into how life was a pre-human era. Some of the fossils found in the Sahara Desert were dinosaur fossils. While some might argue that dinosaurs never existed, the evidence backing this up is very clear. One of the fossils found was the fossil of the largest carnivore dinosaur to ever live, the Spinosaurus. Research shows that the Spinosaurus lived over 95 million years ago, stood 7 meters high, and was about 16 meters long. At that size, the Spinosaurus was bigger than what we now know as the T-Rex. This dinosaur had a huge sail of bones tusking out of its back and had several adaptations that had scientists in awe. Further studies show that the Spinosaurus was a semi-aquatic dinosaur, pushing the idea that the Sahara had rivers and lakes flowing through it. The Spinosaurus bones were initially destroyed in World War II, so one could not study them further. It was not until the second set of fossils was discovered in Morocco that the researchers had the time to study it. Some of the findings of the Spinosaurus show that it lived partly in the water. It had long, flat feet, perfect for paddling, and nostrils placed high on its snout for easier breathing when mostly submerged. The sail on its back must have been as scary for inhabitants of the Earth back the same way we get scared of sharks today. The chilling discovery made after studying these fossils makes me glad there are no dinosaurs in my day. Aside from the Spinosaurus, the most significant find, other fossils have made it clear that the Sahara had so many dinosaurs inhabiting it. The lakes in the Sahara. When you picture the Sahara, it is impossible to think of it as having any water sources. The truth is far from it. Based on the number of communities living in this desert and the number of lakes found in different parts of the Sahara, it is clear that there are water sources. Apart from Lake Chad, the largest lake in the Sahara, other lakes are in the desert. Records show that there are about 20 lakes in the Sahara Desert. The only reason no one talked about them is they are spun so wide it is easy to miss them. Based on how far apart they are, it would be unwise for you to go out searching for a drink in the desert. Best to take the supply with you. Some of the lakes are also salty, so the water might not be suitable for drinking. Nomadic families stay around these water sources since they need water for themselves and their livestock. It is a good thing they keep camels then. A cow would not survive the desert heat and lack of water. World War II Kitty Hawk Plane. During World War II, Flight Sergeant Dennis Copping disappeared while flying a damaged Kitty Hawk P-40. He boarded the flight on June 28, 1942, and was never heard from again. Search and rescue efforts amounted to nothing, and people gave up on the search. It was not until 2010 that remains of the plane were found in the Sahara Desert. An oil worker stumbled upon them by chance since no one was looking. The strange thing was, the aircraft was intact and did not look hampered with, save that the parachute had been opened and was used to create a shelter by the plane. The plane was taken to Al Aman and restored. Some people believe this was not the best course of action, and the plane should have been left in the desert to honor the young pilot's memory. Others felt the restoration job was so shoddy it looked like a poor paint job. As for the remains of Flying Sergeant Dennis, there has been no evidence of his remains nearby. Whether he died in the desert or found his way to freedom is another mystery that the Sahara will continue holding on to. Home to sea monsters. The Sahara Desert is one of the areas archaeologists love looking around. At the same time, discovering fossils and whales might have been shocking. Other discoveries make me glad I live in this present era. One other discovery is that of sea monster fossils. While we have whales that span several cruise ship lengths, the fossils found in the Sahara show that there were bigger sea monsters back in the day. One of the fossils' discoveries was that of a 9-meter-long crocodile named M. rex. M. rex is so far the biggest crocodile to have existed. It is believed that M. rex lived around Tethyan's Ocean, since that was the only place to accommodate him at the time. At Tethys, M. rex used a big mouth and a big bite to feed on ocean turtles and fish. It is also believed that M. rex might have snacked on the carcass of large creatures that shared its home at Tethyan's Ocean. Compared to the present-day crocodile, M. rex is a mammoth and would have been a sight and a terror in our day. Libyan desert glass. Do you think you know all there is to know about meteors and the wreckage they leave behind? Think again. One of the aftermaths of meteors striking Earth or any other planet is leaving behind cosmic beauties. It is believed that over 29 million years ago, a meteor struck Earth with so much energy that it melted the Libyan region into sheets of melted glass. While this killed most of the population on Earth, it left behind Libyan desert glass. Even though no one has done the crater left by the meteors, the Libyan desert glass remains to date. When Howard Carter opened the tomb of Tutankhamun, some of the treasures found were Libyan glass. One of these treasures was a bejeweled breastplate. At the center of this breastplate was a sacred scarab beetle carved from green glass. While it is likely that the Egyptians have no idea where the gals came from, it is obvious that this is one of the few treasures made from outwardly metal. There was even a dagger in the tomb that was made from iron that came from a meteorite. All these treasures show how many materials were left behind after the meteor strike. There is a theory that more treasures are yet to be discovered from Libyan desert glass. Meteors and craters. The Sahara Desert has so many craters left behind by meteors. During the dinosaur period, so many meteors hit Earth which caused the extinction of most dinosaurs. The species that survived evolved into some of the animals as we know today. While not all of the craters have been found, archaeologists keep finding evidence of these events in the desert. The known ones are the meteor that hit near the Libyan desert and caused the formation of desert glass. It is believed that more discoveries will be made as time goes by. Craters might look interesting and fun, but if the dinosaur extinction is anything to go by, it is clear that this is not something we would want to experience in the present day. The Lost Fortress. One of the things satellite images have helped with is bringing to light things that might have been missed by explorers. Based on satellite imaging, areas around the Libyan desert look like humans occupied them. These are areas built to look like really sophisticated foresters. What satellite images do is figure out if certain patterns in inhabitable areas of the desert make sense. In collaboration with oil industries, archaeologists can move into these areas and take a closer look at everything. By taking a closer look, researchers could ascertain that the Garamantes occupied the area. Before Colonel Gaddafi toppled the Garamantes, they led a sophisticated life in the desert. The Garamantes flourished from around the 2nd century BC to until 7th century AD. Since the area they lived in was very arid, they dug underground channels to get water from their ancient reservoirs. With time, these reservoirs ran out of water and the fields withered. With time, the Sahara covered the fortresses built and the remains of the forest and villages. What remained was whatever the satellites could pick up from above. Fun facts about the Sahara. Before we go to the last discovery scientists have made about the Sahara, here are some fun facts that you should know about this desert. Did you know that the Sahara Desert is the largest in the world? It encompasses most of North Africa and some of East Africa along North Sudan. The desert spans the countries of Morocco, Algeria, Chad, Egypt, Libya, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, Western Sahara, Sudan, and Tunisia. The desert spans 3.6 million square miles and is as big as China or the USA. That is a lot of sun and heat. The Sahara Desert has occupants despite the heat. The nomads living in the Sahara are called Bedouin nomads and keep camels. Speaking of camels, the easiest way to get through the Sahara Desert is through camels. While a couple of cars might get through it, sand is slippery, and if you run out of gas, you are on your own. Even though some areas have oil drills, most of the desert is bare. Getting to a gas station is not an option, so saddle up. One of the things the Sahara is known for is the high heat that it gets. Since there is very little vegetation, temperatures hit a staggering 136 degrees Fahrenheit. There are days when the temperature might drop, but it stays high for the better part. On the other hand, the temperatures at night drop to almost freezing, so it might take some getting used to. It still makes for a trip if you are up for it. Did you know that the Sahara Desert is more rock than sand? Most people assume that because deserts are made of sand, the Sahara is as well. While there was a time when the Sahara was very sandy, the wind blew most of the sand away and exposed the hard rocky underneath. As it stands, there is more rock in the Sahara. Watch out for that pebble and ensure you keep your toes tucked in safe when you take a walk next. The last fun fact about the Sahara is that it has been used as a set. The Star Wars franchise shoots in the Sahara, which gives it a futuristic and an out-of-this-world feeling. The desert has been used in movies like Mad Max: Fury Road and continues to be the go-to location for people who want something unique and different. Now that we have covered most of the fun facts about the Sahara Desert, let's go back to our list. Before you finish this list, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. We make shocking content, yet educational at the same time. Click the notification bell so you know whenever we upload a new video. The last discovery made by scientists about the Sahara Desert will shock you just as much as it shocked them. The Sahara was once tropical and had vegetation. The one thing most people struggle to believe is that the Sahara Desert once covered with vegetation. Looking at it now with all the dunes and heat, one cannot imagine that the Sahara was green and luscious. However, satellite imaging and the presence of fossils show that this is true. The Sahara was humid and had vegetation. Sahara used to be a tropical area, and to understand how it became a desert, we need to look at the past. The Sahara used to experience both humidity and aridity caused by wobbles of the Earth's axis. The change is based on how the sun's rays hit the Earth's surface. Over time, there has been a change in how these rays get to the Earth. The northern part of Africa receives rain during the monsoon period, ensuring enough greenery and the rivers have water. About 450 years ago, the time between humidity and aridity happened so fast that the desert did not get sufficient rain. With this, the Sahara Desert developed into what we have today. There have been studies done by different researchers that try to explain what happened to cause this to happen. One of the findings was that the Earth's tilt changed slightly, which meant that the Sahara region was exposed to the sun or longer. There was also evidence that overgrazing reduced the Earth's atmosphere, which led to the rapid development of the desert. In a way, the desertification of the Sahara was influenced by humans. Now you are in the know about all the awesome discoveries made by scientists, archaeologists, as well as geologists. If you loved this video, leave a like and comment below. It also helps to share this video with your friends since sharing is caring. If you are yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to our YouTube channel today. We post informative videos like this regularly, and you will learn more from us.